case you're about to see and the characters portrayed are fictional, but the procedure is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public.
Detective Constable, Fulchester Police Station at Millside.
Constable, on the night of October the 28th last year, did you pay a visit to the defendant, Mrs. Conway?
Yes, sir, together with Detective Sergeant Crerand.
Would you please tell us the purpose of that visit?
Yes, sir, we were anxious to see Delroy Conway, Mrs. Conway's son, about an attempted robbery. We merely wished to ask him a few questions about a car that was used in the offence.
I see. In other words, he was a suspect.
Yes, sir, you could put it like that.
After arresting 3 young West Indians for an attempted robbery, police called on the home of Mrs. Wilma Conway and her son Delroy. During the visit, a serious fight broke out between the investigating officers and the Conways. As a result, Wilma Conway and Delroy Conway are now charged with assaulting police officers in the execution of their duty. Delroy Conway faces an additional and more serious charge of wounding.
So would you say that that was a routine activity in your line of work?
Well, in the CID, very routine, sir, yes.
And if your inquiries led you to somebody's home and it was necessary for you to interview the occupant, would you consider that to be routine?
Oh, yes, sir, part and parcel of the job. In fact, in the CID, I'd say we spend more time chasing up leads and following information than doing more glamorous things like catching bank robbers red-handed.
When you called on the Conways, this then was something you were accustomed to? Very much in the line of duty, a reasonable, straightforward, routine inquiry?
Quite routine, sir, yes.
And do you follow a particular procedure when calling at somebody's home, Constable?
Yes, sir, we do. We identify ourselves as police officers, very carefully explain the nature of our business, and then proceed with the inquiry.
And did you do this when you called on the Conways on the night of October the 28th last year?
Yes, sir, we did. Mrs. Conway opened the door. We identified ourselves and stated the nature of our business.
Now, will you please tell us what happened?
Well, she asked us to step inside. Do you mind if I use my notebook, Your Honour?
Were notes made at the time, Constable?
They were made in the police station about 2.5 hours after the incident.
Yes, well, very well. Carry on, Constable.
Mrs. Conway called for her son. I then saw Delroy Conway come out of the front room and into the hallway. I said to Conway, we would like you to accompany us to the police station.
A moment, Constable. Have you had any dealings with Delroy Conway before?
No, sir.
I see. So how was Conway to know who you were?
Well, Mrs. Conway told him. She called out when she told him we were there.
I see. You asked him to accompany you to the police station?
Yes, sir. We said we would like you to accompany us to the police station and make a positive identification of a vehicle which has been used in an attempted robbery this evening. A vehicle hired in your name was used in that offence. He then lunged forward and struck me in the face with his fist. I attempted to restrain Conway. Mrs. Conway moved between us and tried to prevent me doing so.
So at the same time as having to restrain Conway, you had the unenviable task of having to defend yourself against a second person, Mrs. Conway.
Yes, sir. She took hold of my hair and pulled, and at the same time she kicked me.
Did she? How many times?
Twice, as I remember, so I managed to avoid most of them.
Please go on, Constable.
Detective Sergeant Crerand attempted to hold her back, but he was having some difficulty. She is rather a big woman. While Mrs. Conway had hold of my hair, Conway tried to get away into the living room. I hung on to him and sort of went with him. The next thing I knew, we must have tripped over something and we were on the floor of the living room. Conway managed to break away and I saw him pick up an object from the bar behind him. He then struck me over the head.
I see. Will you please show the witness exhibits number 1 and 2? Thank you. Now, Constable, would you look at the sketch plan, exhibit number 1? Does that show the front room and the bar to which you've just referred?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit number 1, Your Honour. Now, Constable, please examine exhibit 2. Is that the object with which you were struck?
That's it, sir.
Thank you. Exhibit number 2, Your Honour. Now, a heavy object, such as that, brought down with some force, must have caused injury.
Oh, yes, it was very painful.
Yes, I'm sure it was. Did you have to receive medical attention for this injury?
Yes, sir. I was taken to Fulchester General, where they stitched the wound up.
So, this was no minor graze. No superficial wound, but a gash that required stitching.
I object, Your Honour. My learned friend is not only leading the witness, but making observations he's not qualified to give.
Mr. Elliot, this must be a medical matter, surely.
Of course, Your Honour. If my learned friend had been a trifle more patient, Your Honour, I was about to refer to the statement of one Dr. Pradesh. He was the physician who attended to the constable on the night in question. A conditional witness order was made out in relation to him, and I therefore refer to his statement, Your Honour.
Yes, I see. Well, carry on.
Now, the doctor describes the wound, and I quote, a lesion 4 centimetres long requiring 6 stitches compatible with a blow from a heavy glass object. Am I right in saying, Constable, that as a result of this injury you were unable to perform your duties for several days?
Yes, sir. I was on sick leave for a week.
So, during the course of a routine inquiry, one that you carry out at least half a dozen times a week, you sustained an injury serious enough to put you on the sick list for 1 week. Now, will you please show the witness exhibit number 3, the bundle of photographs? Constable, do you recognize these photographs?
Yes, sir. These are photographs taken of my wound at the police station just before they took me to hospital.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, Mr. Hush up, Delroy. I've got to talk before we start. Oh.
Mr. Conway, if you wish to consult with your counsel, please try to do so in an orderly manner.
I'm sorry, Your Worship.
Mr. Steed, you want a little time with your client?
Yes, it seems I do, Your Honour.
All right, but do try and be brief.
Thank you, Your Honour.
If they use them pictures to show what's supposed to have happened to him, ask him what he did to me.
Well, you have to expect them to over-dramatise the injury.
Too right they have. They're bloody liars.
Keep your voice down, please, will you?
Ask him what he did to me at the station when he got back from the hospital. I couldn't move for 2 days.
Yes, that may be the case, but it's a different matter to try and prove it in court without any concrete evidence. Photographs, for example.
But he did it all the same.
Please keep your voice down. Look, if we bring up what happened at the police station, the prosecution will bring up the question of your previous conviction.
What?
I had a chat with the prosecution. They put forward the idea, if we don't mention the police station, they won't bring up the question of your previous conviction.
So that's it. You doing a deal with them?
No, we don't do deals in court. We simply have an understanding which I thought would be beneficial to us. We haven't got a leg to stand on. It's your word against theirs. In a case of this kind, you against the police, who do you think the jury are likely to believe?
You're supposed to be representing me. You're supposed to be helping us, aren't you? Not doing deals behind your back.
Have you finished your examination in chief, Mr. Elliot?
Would you just please let me get on?
Yes, indeed I have, Your Honour.
Mr. Steed, are you ready to go on?
Yes, I am, Your Honour. I'm sorry for taking up the court's time.
Yes, well, do try and be brief.
Yes. Now, Constable, were you and Detective Sergeant Crerand in uniform when you called on the Conways?
No, sir. CID officers are usually in plain clothes.
Yes. What time of night was it, Constable?
Shortly after 11 o'clock.
It's 11:25 to be precise. It was late, a time when most people are already or about to go to bed. In fact, Mrs. Conway was in her dressing gown when she answered the door to you, was she not?
Yes, sir.
And there, standing in front of her, were 2 burly-looking men she'd never seen before in her life. An unnerving experience, wouldn't you agree, Constable?
No, not really. She knew who we were.
How did she know who you were?
Sergeant Crerand produced identification.
And after this identification was produced, are you quite sure she clearly understood who you were and why you were there at that time of night?
Oh, yes, sir. Otherwise she wouldn't have invited us in. She'd have slammed the door on us.
Oh, so she invited you in? Well, what did she say? Did she say, would you please come in? Would you like to step inside? What exactly did she say?
Well, I can't remember her exact words. I think she said...
Think. But you don't know, do you, Constable? Now, I suggest you don't know because Mrs. Conway never invited you in at all. You barged straight past her. All you said is Delroy in, and you barged right past her.
No, sir.
All right, Constable. Now, let's move on to the moment when you asked Mr. Conway to accompany you to the station. Do you expect him to go quietly?
Well, you can never tell. You've got to be cautious.
So, being a bit cautious, what did you do?
Well, I think I took hold of his arm.
Think? Well, did you...
Well, I took hold of his arm.
Wasn't it more a case of grabbing his arm?
No, I just took hold of it.
But you took hold of his arm pretty firmly, not to say aggressively. You could hardly have been, as you put it, cautious. And that was the moment, according to your own testimony, when the violence began, was it not?
Yes, sir, you might say that. That's when he hit me in the face.
Now, I put it to you, Constable, that rather than you being the innocent victim of an unprovoked attack, that you and Detective Sergeant Crerand provoked the violence yourselves.
No, sir. We put it to him very politely that he accompany us to the station, and he hit me.
Yes, but a moment ago, you told us that you also took hold of Conway's arm. Now, I would have thought that was aggressive rather than polite. What did you do, Constable, when Conway resisted?
Well, I had to try and restrain him.
Politely?
Well, no, sir, he just hit me.
So you hit him back, is that it?
No, sir. I wanted to arrest him. I had the right to arrest him for assaulting a police officer. That's what I was trying to do.
I see. And some minutes later, you were still fighting, but by now on the floor in the living room. Now, is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say fighting exactly, more like scuffling.
Well, scuffling, brawling, fighting, call it what you will. Now, you recall the cocktail bar in the Conway's living room, Constable?
Yes.
And you and Conway were quite close to it when you were on the floor.
Quite close, yes.
How close?
About a foot, I'd say.
In fact, one of you or both of you pushed up against or hit the bar while you were fighting. Now, isn't that the case, Constable?
No, sir.
Oh, come along, Constable. Surely you're not trying to tell us that the two of you rolled across the floor and miraculously stopped just short of the bar, and there you stayed exactly 1 foot away from the bar while the fighting was going on?
Well, we might have just accidentally touched it.
Thank you, yes. Constable, would you please look at the framed photograph, Exhibit 4, Your Honor. Tell me if you recognize it.
Yes, I believe it was on the bar.
Do you know how it came to be broken?
I've no idea, sir.
Then I will tell you, Constable. It was broken at exactly the same time as the glass ornament. The two of you hit the bar with such force that both of the objects on top of the bar, the family portrait and the glass ornament, toppled over and fell.
No, sir. He hit me on the head with the ornament.
On the contrary, Constable. I suggest it was the weight of the glass ornament falling from the height of the bar some 3 feet, which did the injury to your head.
No, sir.
Thank you, Constable.
So, very commendably, Sergeant. After a 100-mile-per-hour car chase through the streets of Fulchester, you succeeded in apprehending 3 of the gang, one of whom was armed with a knife, but the 4th member, alas, managed to get away. Now, was the 4th member of the gang also a West Indian?
Yes, he was.
If I understand the innuendo correctly, Your Honor, I'm bound to object to this.
What exactly do you hope to achieve with this line of questioning, Mr. Elliot?
Your Honor, I'm merely trying to establish that the detective sergeant had every good reason to pursue his inquiries at the Conway home, and that his decision to visit the home at that time of night was not arbitrary, nor capricious, nor impelled by some dark motive, but based upon several interrelated pieces of evidence, information, which when put together left the detective no choice but to act in the way he did. In other words, within the scope of his duty.
In that case, I trust you're able to show the sergeant had considerably more information than the mere fact that the 4th gangster was coloured.
That is indeed my intention, Your Honor. Now, Sergeant, would you please tell the court your reasons for wanting to see Delroy Conway on the night of October the 28th?
During the interrogation of the prisoners, the 3 chaps we'd apprehended, it came out that all 3 came from the Millside estate, so there was a pretty good likelihood that the 4th member of the gang came from the same estate as well. Now, when we were checking the registration of the car used in the robbery, we discovered that it was the property of Wakeman Cars, but was at the time on hire to one Delroy Conway, a West Indian, living on the Millside estate.
And did you know this man, Sergeant?
No, sir, I did not.
However, adding all these factors together, you felt that the defendant may very well have been your man.
At the time, he was certainly high on our list of suspects.
But could you tell me, Sergeant, how you knew it was a West Indian that hired the car? You're not trying to tell us that car hire companies keep a record of the ethnic background of their clients?
No, Your Honour, we contacted the hire company, asked for a description, and they told us he was a coloured gentleman.
But he could have been an Asian, for that matter.
Not with a name like Delroy, Your Honour.
Do you have your ID card with you, Sergeant?
Yes, sir, I think I do.
Yes, very good, very good. Tell me, is it normal practice when identifying yourself to the public to produce this ID card?
Yes, sir.
On the contrary, Sergeant. I put it to you that the opposite is the case, and the ID is very rarely produced unless specifically requested.
Well, that sometimes happens, yes, sir, but most people just accept our word, and then it isn't always necessary to show the card.
Yes. There are occasions, aren't there, Sergeant, when you don't even bother to introduce yourselves verbally. Isn't this what happened the night you visited the Conways?
No, sir. Obviously, when dealing with certain villains, you can't afford to worry about the niceties. You can't go in there shaking hands and introducing yourself.
On the Conways, did you decide to give them all the niceties?
Yes, sir.
Really? But I don't understand your reasoning, Sergeant. You told us a moment ago, or at least implied, that Conway was a prime suspect, and after all, you had just been involved in a 100-mile-per-hour car chase with possible criminal associates of Conway, one of whom was armed with a knife. Are you really saying that when you visited the Conways, you had decided, as you put it, to give them all the niceties?
Yes, sir. Perhaps if we hadn't, all this could have been avoided.
Indeed. Not a great believer in the polite approach, are you, Sergeant?
No. As I said, it's the, depends on the situation and the people involved.
Yes, would you kindly show us how you produced your ID card the night you visited the Conways?
You want me to do it now, sir?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sergeant. Now would you kindly show us how you produced the ID card on the night of the 28th?
That's what I've just done, sir.
I see. But very slowly, very deliberately. And on most occasions, this is the way you do it, is it, Sergeant?
Well, perhaps not on every occasion, no.
Quite. In fact, if the truth be known, the speed at which it's normally produced is something more like that, is it not, Sergeant?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that, sir. Not as quickly as you've done it.
Perhaps somewhere between my speed and your speed, then. What was the light like on Conway's Landing?
I'm sorry, sir?
Was it brightly lit, or was it dim?
It was just normal, as far as I can remember, sir.
No, Sergeant, I'm afraid it wasn't just normal. The landing outside the Conway's flat was in total darkness. Because in the week you paid your visit, all except one of the row of 10 lights on the landing had been vandalized. The only light which was working on the night in question was at the far end of the landing, some 30 yards from where you were, Sergeant.
Well, I didn't notice it was dark because Mrs. Conway had turned the hall light on inside.
You see, Sergeant, Mrs. Conway never saw you produce your ID card. So either you're not telling the truth, or else there's some other explanation. What with the negligible light from the hallway, the speed with which you produced your ID card, somewhere between your speed and my speed, Mrs. Conway would hardly have been able to take it in. You see, Sergeant, as far as Mrs. Conway could perceive, you were two rather sinister-looking strangers asking to talk with her son. And the last thing she'd be likely to do would be to invite you to step across the threshold.
Well, she did invite us in, sir.
You sure, Sergeant? Because your colleague didn't seem to be too sure.
Well, I'm sure.
Very well, then, Sergeant. Now, once you're inside, Delroy Conway came into the hall from the living room. Now, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you identify yourself to him?
No, Mrs. Conway did it for us.
What did she say?
It was a bit difficult to make out what she was saying, sir, because she was speaking in a strange dialect. But from what I could make out, she simply repeated to him what I had said to her at the door.
I see. So you didn't show your ID card to Conway?
No, sir, I didn't think it was necessary.
You know, I find it very strange, Sergeant, that you saw fit to identify yourself at the door, yet when it came to the person you'd actually come to interview, Delroy Conway, you just didn't bother. Now, would you have been so lackadaisical had you been carrying out your investigation in, say, the Bushy Hill area or one of the private estates?
Exactly the same.
Really? So had you wished to interview a suspect living in a more affluent area, you would be quite content to leave it all to the butler or whoever else should answer the door to explain while you were there, to explain why you were there at that time of night?
I wouldn't know about that, sir.
Oh, you don't know about that. Then I suggest that you behave in one way in the Bushy Hill area and in another way for Millside. I put it to you, Sergeant, that because you were in Millside dealing with an immigrant family, you'd already made up your mind about Conway's guilt. And you went there not with the intention of questioning him, but of arresting him.
I'm sorry, sir, I really don't know what you're trying to say.
Well, then, I shall tell you. I am suggesting that Conway acted in self-defense, and that it was you and your colleague, D.C. Wainwright, who were the aggressors. As soon as you saw Delroy Conway in the hallway, you pushed past Mrs. Conway and made a grab for him.
No, sir.
Sergeant, you did not see Delroy Conway go to the bar, lift up a heavy glass object, and strike D.C. Wainwright with it, did you?
No, sir, I did not.
When the alleged incident actually occurred, where were you?
I was standing in the hallway dealing with Mrs. Conway.
So, as the cocktail bar is at the far end of the living room, you weren't able to see what was going on. Now, is that correct, Sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Sergeant, when were you first aware that Constable Wainwright had sustained a head injury?
I was standing in the hallway dealing with Mrs. Conway when I saw Detective Constable Wainwright coming out of the living room holding onto the accused. The constable's head was streaming with blood. He showed me the glass dolphin and he said, "The so-and-sos hit me over the head."
Ask him what you really call this. They're pair of liars and commas.
Be quiet.
Nothing.
Sit down, Conway. Sit down. Carry on, Mr. Elliot.
Sergeant, how long have you been on the force?
10 years, sir.
And I believe that for the last 4 years, you have been involved in community relations.
Is that what you call it? Picking on black people and beating them up? Is that what you call it? Community relations?
Conway, I won't warn you again. If you persist in this, I will have no alternative but to treat you as being in contempt and to remove you from the court. Carry on, Mr. Elliot, and let's have no further interruptions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Sergeant, will you please tell us about your involvement in community relations?
Yes, sir. I have a special responsibility for liaison between the CID and the community liaison officer.
Now, I'm informed that in your spare time, you put in quite a few hours working with immigrant teenagers. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'm on the management board of the Millside Boys Club, which caters for a high number of immigrant teenagers from the area.
Uh-huh. So then it would be fair to say, then, that you've had considerable experience of the special problems of the immigrant community.
A fair amount, yes, sir.
So when you decided to visit the Conways with Detective Sergeant Constable Wainwright, and you knew that you would be dealing with an immigrant family, did you take this into consideration?
Well, obviously, sir, we have to try to be fair and treat everybody the same.
Bollocks.
So we do make a point of being as courteous and as clear in our intentions as possible.
Now, remembering your oath, was this the case on the night when you went to the Conways?
Very much so, sir. Especially as only the week before we'd had to call on a number of immigrant households whose windows had been smashed.
You didn't do much about it, did you?
Be quiet,
How many did you
please.
arrest?
Conway, I've given you what I consider fair warning, and you've totally disregarded me. I will not have this court made a mockery of. Take him down to the cells.
Immigrant this, immigrant that. I'm not an immigrant. I was born in this country. Get off.
One final and most important question, Sergeant. When you were first standing in the hallway, did you see the defendant, Delroy Conway, initiate the violence and strike D.C. Wainwright?
Yes, sir, I did.
Thank you.
Join us again tomorrow when the case of the Queen against Conway and Conway will be resumed in the Crown Court. The case you're about to see and the characters portrayed are fictional, but the procedure is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the
All
jury is
stand.
selected from members of the general public. Wilma Conway and Delroy Conway are charged with assaulting police officers in the execution of their duty. Delroy Conway faces an additional and more serious charge of wounding a police officer. The case is now in its second day. During the first day, Delroy Conway was removed from the court because of continuous interruptions.
I've decided to give you a second chance, Conway. But on condition, if there's any further disruption, I will punish you for contempt. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
Carry on, Mr. Elliot.
Thank you, Your Honor. Call Mrs. Iris Minton, please.
Mrs. Iris Minton.
Mrs. Minton, how long have you lived on the Millside estate?
3 years.
And you live at number 25 Willoughby Court, which is next door to the Conways.
Yes, sir.
Are you and the Conways on friendly terms?
Well, I can't say we're that close, but we say hello, yes.
Would you please tell us what happened on the evening of October the 28th last year, Were you at home?
Yes. I was on my own watching TV because my husband works on a night time. I remember it because it were wrestling. I always watch it late on a Tuesday night, and there was a lot of noise coming from next door. First of all, I didn't think much of it, but then it got so loud I couldn't concentrate on the telly.
Mrs. Minton, I wonder if I could ask you to be as brief as possible.
Oh, isn't this what you wanted to know?
Yes, but perhaps you could leave out a few of the details.
Well, it got so loud I'd had enough, so I put on my coat and went round to complain.
And what happened then?
I knew something bad was going on the minute I got out on the landing, because I could hear a lot of shouting and screaming coming from 27, because the front door was open.
And were you actually able to see what was going on inside the Conways' flat?
Well, what I saw from the doorway was Mrs. Conway really having a go at this poor policeman. She was shouting and screaming at him to get out of the house, all this kind of thing. I couldn't understand half of it, though, because it was in Jamaican, and she was hysterical anyway.
Mrs. Minton, I wonder if you'll just explain to us exactly what you mean by having a go.
Well, she was pushing and punching him, and all he was doing was trying to calm her down.
I see. She was pushing and punching him. Now, do you see that officer in the court today, Mrs. Minton?
Yes, over there.
You've pointed out Detective Sergeant Crerand. Will you please tell us what happened after that?
Well, then I saw the Conway boy, the eldest one, come out of the sitting room, and this other officer, whose head was bleeding quite badly. Well, seeing this, she started again, didn't she? Only this time she set about the one whose head was bleeding.
So you saw the defendant, Mrs. Conway, having a go at both of the police officers?
Yes, she did.
Thank you, Mrs. Minton. You've been most helpful.
Would you stay where you are, Mrs. Minton? I'd like to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. Have you had any occasion to visit the Conways before the night of the 28th?
I've called on them once or twice, yes.
So what was the reason for these visits?
Can't remember offhand. I borrowed something off Mrs. Conway. A mail order catalogue. That's what it was, yes. I gave her it back, though.
Yes, and besides these neighbourly visits, Mrs. Minton, you've had no other cause to call on the Conways?
No, sir.
You've never called round to complain?
Well, yes, we've had to ask them to turn the music down.
So would I be right in thinking, Mrs. Minton, that as neighbours, you find the Conways rather troublesome?
I wouldn't say that.
Well, how is it that on numerous occasions, both you and your husband have complained to the council about your neighbours, the Conways?
Well, there's no denying it. We have complained. But that don't mean to say I've anything against them because they're black, if that's what you're getting at.
I wasn't, Mrs. Minton. But perhaps you have a guilty conscience about something.
I don't feel guilty. Why should I?
Well, you might feel guilty about the insulting language you've used against Mrs. Conway and her sons on numerous occasions, for instance.
What insulting language? We've been round to complain a few times.
Yes, and on one of these occasions, you politely suggested to Mrs. Conway that she and her family of monkeys should pack their bags and go back to the jungle.
It was just a figure of speech.
It's a very insulting figure of speech, Mrs. Minton.
Well, she didn't take it seriously, did she?
On the contrary. Mrs. Conway did take this and many other remarks you made very seriously. Weren't they meant seriously? Have you ever considered how hurtful it must be to be on the receiving end of such remarks like this?
Well, they never consider us, do they? I mean, my husband has to sleep during the day, and because her boys aren't working, they want that raggy music full up all day long. And then when I need my sleep, the night shift moves in. Parties, cars pulling up outside, bottles left on the landing, people doing the toilet in the lift. You can smile, but you don't have to live with it, do you? And when you go round to complain, they don't consider your feelings when they're telling you to F off out of it.
Yes. In other words, Mrs. Minton, one could hardly say that you were a friend of the Conways or even well disposed enough towards them to say hello in the street. In fact, I put it to you, Mrs. Minton, that you must be feeling a rather perverse satisfaction at seeing your neighbours in this sad predicament. And Mrs. Minton, did you witness what sparked off the fight which you've described to us?
Well, no.
So, not being able to see the beginning of the fight, you were also unable to see who started it. All you saw, Mrs. Minton, was the tail end of it and jumped to your own biased conclusions.
No, I didn't.
But in your evidence, Mrs. Minton, you said you saw Mrs. Conway having a go with the poor policeman. How do you know he was a policeman?
I just knew.
I see. You just knew. It's amazing. Did he say anything to establish that he was a policeman?
No, he didn't, but I just knew, you can tell.
So, on the basis of pure guesswork and nothing else, you were quite happy to stand by and see your neighbour, Mrs. Conway, struggling with two men who may very well have been intruders.
Well, I was right. They weren't intruders. They were police. I knew it all along.
Thank you, Mrs. Minton.
Are there any further questions?
No, Your Honour. And that concludes the case for the prosecution.
Take the book in your right hand and repeat the words on the card aloud.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Mrs. Wilma Conway,
Yes, sir.
and you live at 27 Willoughby Court.
Yes, sir.
When did you first come to England, Mrs. Conway?
I came over here in 1954.
From the West Indies?
No, Lagos, Nigeria. My husband came from the West Indies. We got married here. And while I was working for Fulchester Transport, I had my first boy, Tony. It was his wedding we hired the car for.
We'll come to the reason why you hired the car later. So you've been here now for 23 years, Mrs. Conway.
Yes, sir.
And you have two other children who were born here.
Yes, sir. Delroy and the younger one, Erwin.
Now, am I right in saying that you brought up your family single-handed?
Well, sort of. Because after Delroy was born, things didn't go very well between me and Mr. Conway, and he left. And for the next few years, he comes and he goes. And after Erwin, we never saw him again. He'd gone for good.
I see. So how have you coped since your husband left you 16 years ago?
Well, it was hard at the beginning, but I had to keep the family together. So I was cleaning part-time. And when they got older, I got a full-time job, the one I'm doing now at the cosmetic factory.
I suppose if you'd not been able to keep your family together, you would have had to have considered placing your children in care.
I would never do that.
You've been at the cosmetics factory for how long, Mrs. Conway?
About 8 years.
That's quite a long time to stay in one job.
Well, all my friends are there, and I like the fame.
So, even though you've been left on your own in a strange country, with a daunting prospect, having to bring up and support 3 growing boys, you've managed to overcome these difficulties and keep your family together. Now, would you tell us, Mrs. Conway, during all the years you've been here, have things changed much towards the black community?
I really can't see the relevance of all this, Mr. Steed.
Your Honour, I would like, if I may, to establish some of the background so that the jury will clearly understand what a visit from the police means to a black family.
All right, but do try and be brief.
Thank you, Your Honour. So, to return to the question, Mrs. Conway, have things changed much?
For both me and my husband, any job we get in England, even sweeping the street, seem better than what we get back home. We have no skills and very little money, so we don't care what job we take. But for the kids born here, they expect more. My Delroy has got 4 CSE, and he became a skilled carpenter. But when the firm he works for closed down, he couldn't get no job as a carpenter. All he could get was a dirty job, same thing as his father did 20 years before. So nowadays, these kids are all unemployed. They can't find work they would like to do. And when the police see them hanging about, they don't understand them, so they just pick on them.
What do you mean, pick on them, Mrs. Conway?
I really must object, Your Honour. I hope Mrs. Conway will indulge me, but must we, every time we have a black defendant in the dock, be subjected to a prolonged sociological study of the problems of the black community of Fulchester? Now, we are here simply to try a case of assault, and I submit that colour is immaterial.
Your Honour, a police officer's role today in society is more than just arresting people and preventing crime. He functions within and as part of a larger social fabric to which he is both accountable and responsible. Now, this is especially true in an area as sensitive as Millside. And what I am trying to establish, Your Honour, is that the 2 officers in question acted in a manner quite contrary to this social responsibility.
Yes. I think I can see your point, Mr. Steed. Yes, carry on.
Thank you, Your Honour. So, to return to the question, why do you say the police pick on black youths?
When my boys come home from school or from the youth club at night, they tell me all kind of things about how they get stopped by the police, searched and get leaks.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Conway. I couldn't understand your last remark.
What His Honour would like to know, Mrs. Conway, is what you mean exactly by leaks.
Oh, that means they get hit, they get beaten.
I see. Thank you, Mrs. Conway. You may carry on.
Well, at first, I wouldn't believe them. When they come home complaining, I think they're just covering up for doing something wrong, and that the police would never do that to them. But now, I'm not sure anymore.
Yes, now, is your change in feeling anything to do with what happened on the night of the 28th?
Well, really and truly, yes. From when they burst into my house, grabbed my son, and then afterwards said they are police, I just started to think differently.
Mrs. Conway, you have heard Detective Sergeant Crerand tell us that when you asked him why he wished to see your son Delroy, he replied that your son had hired a car, which was used in an attempted robbery early that evening, and that he was wanted for routine questioning. Now, did he say that to you, Mrs. Conway?
No. Had he said that, I would have been very surprised, because Delroy wouldn't have had anything to do with it. He was with me all night, getting ready to go to my son's wedding in Manchester. That's why we hired the car. And they never said why they wanted Delroy.
So, you hired the car for your oldest son Tony's wedding the following day, and Delroy had spent a quiet evening at home with you in readiness for an early start in the morning. And am I right in saying that within an hour of your arrival at the police station, the police told you that they had verified all this and they had in fact arrested the fourth person in the attempted robbery?
Yes, sir. They caught all four of them. It was them who stole the car from outside the flat. We know these boys, you see. They all live around the area.
So, if the police had asked you what they claimed to have asked you, you would have no reason to lie to them, and certainly no reason to be afraid of them.
No, sir.
Now, Mrs. Conway, were you at all frightened that evening?
Yes, sir. It was very late, and when I opened the door, I found two men outside who I could hardly see because there is no light. And the only thing they asked me was, is Delroy in? And everything happened so quick, so I just said, yes, he's in. Delroy came out of the living room to see what was going on. And as soon as they saw Delroy, that big man there rushed into the house and grabbed him.
So, had the police acted properly, identified themselves, and explained the purpose behind their visit, all the fighting which followed between yourselves and the officers would not have happened. And if this had been the case, we would not be here today, would we, Mrs. Conway?
Well, I don't know about that, sir.
One final thing, Mrs. Conway. Did you manage to get to your son's wedding on time?
Well, no, sir. We missed the ceremony, but we got there later.
Thank you, Mrs. Conway.
This isn't the first time you've had trouble with the police, is it, Mrs. Conway?
I never had no trouble before.
No, not you, Mrs. Conway. I mean your family. To be specific, your son, Erwin.
Well, yes, my boy's been in trouble.
Erwin, your youngest son. He's in Borstal at this very moment, is he not?
Yes, sir.
Oh, and yet you'd have us believe that you've had no trouble with the police?
We had trouble before, but not like this.
Yet Erwin, he's come up in the courts quite a few times, has he not, Mrs. Conway?
Yes, sir.
And do you feel no malice or resentment toward the police because of this?
No, he did something foolish, got a fair trial and got punished for it.
Mrs. Conway, you've just told us that you believe the police harass your sons. Now, surely it's safe to say that there's no love lost between you and the police, Mrs. Conway.
Well, I don't hold with my boys doing something wrong. And if they break the law, then the police are right in doing what they do. But what I meant by being chased by the police is when they get stopped on suspicion of this and that, when all they do is stand at the bus stop or walk in the street.
So if you know that one of your sons has committed a crime, you'd hand him over to the police. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know about that.
Yes or no, Mrs. Conway?
Please answer the question, Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Yes, you would turn him in, or no, you would not turn him in?
No, I wouldn't turn him in.
I see. So you'd protect your sons against the police even if you knew they'd broken the law?
I really must object, Your Honour. It's a purely hypothetical question. My learned friends place my client in an impossible moral dilemma. I mean, unless there are exceptional circumstances, what mother anywhere could choose between her son and her public duty as a citizen?
The question is only hypothetical in form. And whilst it's an interesting point, Mrs. Steed, I don't think it excuses Mrs. Conway from answering the questions. Carry on, Mrs. Conway.
Thank you, Your Honour. Now, on past occasions, Mrs. Conway, when you've been visited by the police, did you know that they were the police?
Yes, sir.
And how did you know that they were police, Mrs. Conway?
Because they told me so.
And yet you'd have us believe that on the night of October the 28th, the officers who called on you did not tell you that they were police. Is that correct?
No, I told you before. All they said is Delroy in.
So who do you think they were, Mrs. Conway? I mean, if you thought they were strangers, as you've testified, under oath, then why did you simply not close the door to them?
It was so dark and everything happened so fast.
No, it wasn't that dark, Mrs. Conway. Did you not yourself turn the hallway light on?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you did. And that light was sufficient enough for you to see the two officers standing there, and sufficient enough for you to clearly see the identification card which Detective Sergeant Crerand produced.
He never produced nothing.
On the contrary, Mrs. Conway, I suggest that you knew who these men were the minute you opened the door to them. And when D.C. Wainwright asked your son Delroy to accompany him to the police station, you were confronted with the very real possibility that Delroy might be arrested, and you panicked. Understandably, Mrs. Conway, you panicked at the thought of yet another son being taken away from you and the breakup of the family, which you fought so hard to keep together. And your reaction was to respond to the situation like a hen protecting her threatened brood, and you lashed out and punched the detectives.
No, I never punched him.
Mrs. Minton said you did, but thank you. No further questions.
Mrs. Conway, when the police called on you, did they identify themselves?
No, sir.
Did you invite them in?
No, sir.
Did they identify themselves to your son or give him any reason for their visit?
No, sir.
Why did the fighting start?
Because we never knew who they were. They made a grab for Delroy as soon as they saw him.
Now, how were you drawn into the fighting, Mrs. Conway?
Well, when I see what this big man is doing to Delroy, punching him and things, I try to stop him. Then the other one come up and grab me from behind. So, you know, I think, well, he must be a rapist.
Mrs. Conway, I'm sorry. Did you say racist?
No, my lord, I said rapist.
So, you had to defend yourself and your family, your home, from these intruders.
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you at any time assault these men, Mrs. Conway?
No, sir, they assault me.
Now, Mrs. Conway, do you dislike the police?
No, sir, I don't dislike them. I don't hate them. I thought you couldn't fault the British police and the British justice. But as time goes on, I find that police are like everybody else. Some bad and some good, and some very, very bad.
Thank you, Mrs. Conway. Does Your Honour have any questions? I call Delroy Conway.
Is there some problem?
Yeah, there is. I don't want to go in the witness box yet.
Mr. Conway, I've already warned you about your behaviour.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But I've got to talk to him. I've got to talk to me brief.
Surely you've had time to talk to your counsel. Mr. Steed, would you enlighten us?
I have had adequate time to speak to Mrs. Conway, Your Honour, but I'm afraid that...
Yeah, but what about me? I only had half hour. And that was just before we come in here. And besides, there's something important I've got to talk to them about now.
Perhaps I could have 2 minutes of the court's time.
All right, but be brief.
Thank you, Your Honour. Look, what is this all about, Delroy? It's not going to endear you to the jury, you know.
That's what I keep telling him, you know.
You've got to bring up what happened at the police station.
Look, I thought you'd accept it. If they don't mention your previous conviction, we wouldn't mention the police station. Now, listen, please. Things are going pretty well. We're in with a chance. But if they mention your previous conviction, and that's added to what's already been said, it's not going to look very good, is it? What's it going to make your mother look like?
All right. I'll sack you. And you can just defend her.
Oh.
Listen to the man, Delroy. He knows what he's doing. It's his job.
Okay, so the man's all right. But really and truly can't speak for me. It's just another job for him. Tomorrow, another day, he'll have another case. Just a job for him. He's not concerned to tell the truth about what happens to black people.
Of course I am. Why do you think I'm here?
Well, why don't you do what I've asked you?
Because I think it would be against our interests. Now, will you please let me carry on with the case and stop these interruptions?
All right. If that's what you think, I'm going to defend myself.
Oh.
Mr. Steed, are you ready to go on?
I'm afraid not, Your Honour. It's a rather difficult situation. Mr. Conway has expressed a desire to defend himself.
Oh, dear.
It puts me in a rather difficult position, Your Honour, as he was to be my final witness, and if the defence is split at this moment, it may well endanger my remaining client's case.
Yes. Yes, I can see your difficulty, Mr. Steed. Well, I suppose we might adjourn early, and perhaps you'll be able to resolve your difficulties by the morning.
Yes, I certainly hope so, Your Honour.
All stand.
Join us again tomorrow when the case of the Queen against Conway and Conway will be concluded in the Crown Court. The case you're about to see and the characters portrayed are fictional, but the procedure is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public, who will retire at the end of the hearing to reach their own unrehearsed verdict. Wilma Conway and her son Delroy Conway are charged with assaulting police officers in the execution of their duty. Delroy Conway also faces an additional and more serious charge of wounding.
No, look, there is no point in you going in there thinking that you can defend yourself on the basis that gut reaction is going to pull you through, because it's not.
You're going to make a big fool of yourself. What do you know about court and things? You're daydreaming, do you hear? You can't do it on your own, man.
No. Do you understand, if I put it like this? A court of law is like a game, any game, a game of cricket. You've got to understand the rules, the regulations. If you don't understand those...
I'll read. I won't defend myself. I'm too bloody ignorant. But there's one rule I know. You're walking for me and you're me brief, so you've got to do what I tell you. Oh. Just better tell him what happened at the police station.
Boy, you're stubborn, just like your father.
All right. I don't like it, but if you insist, we better go back inside now.
We sort of rolled across the room, me and this guy, and smashed into my mum's bar in the corner. We hit it so hard that everything on top of the bar came down on top of us. Next thing I knew, there was blood all running down his face. When I seen this, I just stopped. When he got up and put an arm lock on us, nearly broke me bloody arm.
And that's the moment when you realised for the first time that you were dealing with a police officer?
No. The first time I realised was after that. I come out the sitting room with my arm still behind me back, and he says to his mate, "The black bastard hit us on the head with this," and hands him one of the broken bits off the floor. Then he turns to us and says under his breath like, "You wait till I get you down the station. I'll sort you out." That's when I realised he was the wicked.
What did you say? The wicked?
Yeah, that's what we call him. The police, the wicked, or the filth.
That'll do. It'll help us and you, Mr. Conway, if you refer to people by their proper names.
Yes. Did Detective Constable Wainwright carry out his threat?
Of course he did. That always happens. They get hurt. They want to get their own back on you sooner or later.
Yes, now, would you tell us exactly what happened?
I must object, Your Honour. These are very serious allegations, and none of them were put to the police officers when they were being cross-examined.
Why wasn't this brought up in your examination of Detective Constable Wainwright?
Your Honour, I will be quite frank about this. In view of the circumstances, I have decided to follow a different strategy. I hope Your Honour will understand.
Yes, I see. Yes, carry on, Mr. Conway.
Well, after they checked out and realized we had nothing to do with the robbery, they went ahead and charged us with assault instead. They let Mum go, but kept me in the cell, because I suppose they reckoned when Wainwright came back from the hospital, they could have us on a wounding charge. After I'd been in the cell a while, Wainwright did come back from the hospital. His head all bandaged up. He lets himself into me cell, while a mate of his keeps guard outside. Then he just steams into us, kicks us in the groin, the stomach, the kidneys. Everywhere he knows he won't mark us too much. He's a real expert at it. So, I just had to close my eyes and take it. Not just the beating, but the things he was calling us while he was doing it. Nigger, black bastard and all that.
Did you make a complaint?
You must be joking. They won't grass on each other, will they? I mean, the place is notorious. Get taken to Millside Police Station and you're due for a beating. Ask any black kid in Fulchester, he'll tell you.
Mr. Conway, I cannot admit as evidence what other people have told you. Or might tell us, unless they come to court and do so under oath. You must try and confine yourself to what you yourself have experienced.
Yeah, but it's a fact. Because other guys have told us they've gone in there and the same thing's happened to them.
That may be the case. But it doesn't concern us here because it is hearsay. What other people have told you. And therefore it's inadmissible.
It's ridiculous.
Mr. Conway, have you had any other distressing experiences at the hands of the police in Fulchester?
Oh, yeah? I've been having distressing experiences since I was a kid. I've been having them at bus stops. I've been having them when I come home late from parties. They're real-life distressing experiences.
Yes, could you give us some specific instances, Mr. Conway?
I'll give you a really good example. I never walk anywhere after 11 p.m. at night. Nor does any other black kid who lives around here. Because if you're out in the street, walking home, you get picked up on suspicion. In fact, it's got so bad that the other night I was walking the last half mile from the station to home. When I get stopped 3 times by 3 different coppers, they're falling over themselves trying to arrest us. So, here I am, unemployed, having to take a taxi to go out at night. And the way things are going, I reckon I'm going to have to use them during the day, because it's getting out of hand with the buses and all. A couple of weeks ago, I was standing at the bus stop in front of the pictures with some mates. There were a lot of shoppers and a lot of young kids just come with the pictures because it's midday Saturday. Then this police van and a panda car screeches to a halt. All these coppers leap out, separate the black kids from the white kids, and sort us blacks. We ain't done nothing. They've got the idea fixed in their minds that every time they see a black kid, he's a mugger or a pickpocket. So every time they see a black, they've got to look twice at him.
Mr. Conway, I must remind you to stick to the facts. Your own opinions, in exactly the same way as things you've heard other people say to you, are not evidence. You must stick to the facts.
Yeah, but what are facts for some and lies for
There's nothing more
others?
to say, Mr. Conway. If you argue with me or disobey me, I will have no hesitation in treating you as being in contempt. Let this be a final warning for you. You've had enough warnings already.
You're all the same. You're all playing a game. Just like he said. A game of cricket. Only the game ain't fair. Because every time I open my mouth, you shut us up and tell us you want facts. But when those two stand up and tell a pack of lies, you let them get away with it. There's one set of rules for you lot, no, that's for us. It's unfair!
Unfair? If this court had been unfair, you wouldn't now be in the witness box giving evidence. You'll be downstairs in a cell, convicted of contempt. And I assure you, if you persist in this, that is indeed where you will find yourself.
Mr. Conway, did your counsel advise you to dress up with a collar and tie? I see. Now, you would have us believe that D.C. Wainwright returned to the police station, walked into your prison cell, and kicked you in the groin, the stomach, and the kidneys. Well, it's not the sort of physical exertion you expect from a man who's just been to hospital to have stitches in his head, is it?
There's nothing wrong with his hands and feet.
There's nothing wrong with your hands and feet, and yet, if we are to believe you, you just closed your eyes and meekly accepted every blow.
I had no choice.
And yet you were left unscathed after this ordeal. Is that correct?
Of course I was marked. Bruiser didn't come up till the next day.
I see. Did you go and see a doctor about this bruising?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't. Just as you failed to lodge an official complaint. Now, I would have thought, from everything you've told this court, that you, of all people, would leap at the chance to lodge an official complaint against the police.
Oh. Me?
Yes, you.
Complain?
Yes.
If I complain, me, a black guy, they'd laugh us at the station.
Why, because it's make-believe?
No, because I'm black. But
why? Why should they or anyone laugh at your blackness?
You ask the coppers.
But I'm asking the questions. Why should they laugh at your blackness? You've been in trouble with the police before, have you not?
Yeah. 4 years ago. I went when I was 14.
Yeah, but I'm not interested in the earlier conviction. Would you just tell us what the most recent conviction was for?
That was 4 years ago. I've done nothing since.
Well, it's 3 years ago, to be exact. Now, would you please answer the question, what was the most recent conviction for?
Well, it was outside a club.
No.
There was a load of us and the club was
What was
closing.
the conviction for?
Obstruction.
Obstructing a police officer in the execution of his duty.
Yeah, but that's what they'd
Mr.
done.
Conway, that was 1974.
They got everybody they could find.
Obstructing police officers...
12 of us got done on obstruction. There was nothing.
Please don't shout me down, Mr. Conway. And in 1977, assaulting police officers in the execution of their duty and wounding with intent. I put it to you, Mr. Conway, that you are the sort of person who, as is perfectly obvious from your behaviour in this court...
Oh, really, Your Honour?
If my learned friend wishes, Your Honour, I'll rephrase that. I suggest, Mr. Conway, that every time you're confronted with authority, particularly the authority of the police, you go out of your way to flout it, to flout that authority. And on the night in question, you realised that the two men standing in your hallway were policemen, and you launched into a violent and vicious attack, which culminated in a serious injury to one of those officers.
He started it. He got what he asked for.
What did you say? He got what he asked for. Why, because you believe the police are filth, scum, to be punched, kicked, bullied, and finally beaten over the head?
It fell. I never hit him. I never did it.
No further questions, thank
you. What court was your obstruction case heard, Mr. Conway?
A magistrate's court.
Yes. What sentence did you receive?
I got fined.
Yes, it was, let me see, a £25 fine, was it not?
Yeah, that was it, £25.
And you've had no further convictions since that happened 3 years ago?
No.
One more thing, Mr. Conway. From everything you've told us about your experiences with the police in Millside, it appears to be your evidence that certain officers are prejudiced against the black community. Is that correct?
2 weeks ago, there was a racist march through Millside. It went right through the estate, where you expect the usual from the racist party, you know. But you know what was really funny? This copper, who only comes right up to us, looks us in the face and says, "Move on, nigger."
I've brought you back into the witness box, Constable, because As you know, we've heard very serious allegations made against you, and I think you should have the chance to answer them in full. Will you please tell us your exact movements after receiving treatment at the hospital?
Yes, sir. I got back to the station where they made me a cup of tea. I had a brief chat with Detective Sergeant Crerand and with the Governor, Detective Superintendent Selby. Then I wrote up the report and made notes of the incident in my notebook. I was still feeling a bit groggy, so I accepted a lift home in one of the patrol cars.
Now, did you at any time, after you had returned to the police station, did you at any time see Conway?
No, sir, not at all.
So then the allegation that you went down to the cells and brutally assaulted Delroy Conway is a complete fabrication.
Totally. I wouldn't have been in any fit condition to do anything, even if I'd wanted to.
And one last thing, Constable. Mr. Conway claims that all is not well at the Millside police station and that you and some of your fellow officers are racially prejudiced. Is there any truth to this allegation?
No, sir. No, none at all. If I might explain.
Please do.
Well, if I see somebody up to something, I can't suddenly stop in my tracks and say, he's coloured. I can't arrest him or I'll be accused of being racially prejudiced. But the fact is, in that area, most of the crimes committed are by coloured people. Well, coloured youths, mostly. So it stands to reason that most of the criminals that come through our hands are coloured. Which is why, I suppose, they think we've got it in for them. But I'm a police officer and I've got a job to do, and first and foremost, that is to catch criminals, and if they're coloured, well, it's not my fault. There's nothing I can do about it.
You went back to the station to fill out the report, Constable.
Yes, sir.
Wasn't that somewhat over and above the call of duty? I mean, if your injury had been as unpleasant as you've led us to believe, then surely you'd have been entitled to go straight home from the hospital. Or is it that your injury wasn't that bad after all?
No, sir, I was still feeling pretty groggy, but I thought filling in that report was important.
Well, why was it so important, Constable? You've just been badly injured. Well, surely the report could have waited a couple of days. You could have written up your notebook at home. After all, you were on the sick list for, what, a week, weren't you? Why this frantic urgency?
Well, I suppose it was a normal sense of duty, but there was nothing urgent about it.
Normal? But a moment ago you told us you felt it very important that the report should go in.
Well, assaulting a police officer is considered a serious offence.
Indeed it is. Serious enough to make you feel very angry about it. Particularly as you yourself were the victim of this alleged assault. Is that it, Constable?
No, sir.
Well, I can see you're a very conscientious officer, Constable. You've just been badly injured. You felt rotten. Yet at 2 in the morning, you hurried back to file your report and write up the incident in your notebook. I put it to you, Constable, that you returned to the station with one objective and one objective alone. To teach Delroy Conway a lesson with your fists.
No, sir. He made the whole story up.
Well, why should he want to do that, Constable?
Well, I was just trying it on, I suppose, trying to discredit the police. I mean, there's proper machinery for them to make official complaints, but they never use it.
Well, who would they go to make an official complaint?
Well, the station. Or they can go straight to the complaints department at headquarters.
Yes, but the police, nevertheless. And perhaps that's the reason why some people don't bother to complain. But of course, now you're telling us that they haven't got anything to complain about in the first place, and that every one of these expressions of dissatisfaction about the police is unfounded. Is that correct, Constable?
No, I wouldn't say that, no.
Well, what would you say? You say that the average policeman does everything by the book. Now, is that what you're saying?
No.
Well, what percentage of these allegations would you say are true? 50%? 25%? 5%? 2.5%?
A very small number, I should think.
Yes. I'm very glad you admitted that, Constable. Because even if it were as small as 1%, it would teach us that policemen are not unfeeling automatons, but human beings. Human beings that can make mistakes, lose their tempers, feel envy, jealousy, and prejudice. Would you not agree, Constable?
Yes, I suppose so, yeah.
Yes, and haven't you felt these sort of feelings at one time or another yourself, Constable? Have you or haven't you?
Well, yes, sir, but if I may say so, people seem to expect the best of both worlds. They expect us to behave impeccably and at the same time prevent crime. Some of these youths we're up against, they've not got any respect. Some of them literally hate the police. They think nothing of doing an officer over. Well, in that sort of atmosphere, you can't expect us to always act like gentlemen.
And wasn't it that sort of atmosphere that existed on the night of the 28th? After all, Constable, if we're to believe your story, a suspect had punched you in the face, struck you on the head, causing you a serious injury. I put it to you, Constable, that it was exactly that sort of atmosphere which gave you the excuse you needed to go down to Delroy Conway's cell and give him a thrashing he'd never forget.
Did your son tell you about the beating he received at the station, Mrs. Conway?
No, I knew nothing about it until the day after I got back from the police station. He was in the bathroom. I saw these bruises on his back. I asked him where he got them. He told me he got them at the station from that officer there.
Did you believe him?
I believed him because when I saw those bruises, I knew they were fresh. They couldn't have been done before the business with the police. Anyway, had they been done before that, I would have seen them.
Then why didn't he tell you straight away?
He didn't want to upset me.
How bad were the bruises, Mrs. Conway?
Well, they were bad, you know. Big bruises. They must have beaten him very hard. He had 4 or 5 on his back and a few more on the back of his legs.
Then why didn't you make a complaint?
Because I asked myself, who is going to investigate the complaint? And the answer I came up with was more police. So I didn't bother.
Thank you, Mrs. Conway. Mr. Elliot.
Mrs. Conway, a few more questions. Now these bruises, now from what you've told us, surely they were serious enough for your son to have them looked at by a doctor?
Not really. What could a doctor do about bruises? I just put some ointment on them, and after a few days they disappeared.
Can you be sure that the bruises were not sustained during the fight in your home?
I couldn't be sure, but they were brawling and fist fighting, and I'm sure that wouldn't cause that kind of injury.
But in actual fact, Mrs. Conway, you have no way of telling. Because as we've already heard, the bulk of the fighting took place at the far end of the living room, out of sight of both yourself and Detective Sergeant Crerand. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mrs. Conway. Members of the jury, let me leave you with these thoughts. My learned friend has done his utmost to clear his client by attacking the police. And yet the only substantiated evidence that we have heard in this case is that a police officer was wounded in the execution of his duty. Now, do you believe that experienced police officers, one of whom devotes his spare time to working with immigrant teenagers, would burst into a coloured family's home, or indeed into anyone's home, in the manner alleged? Remember Mrs. Minton's evidence. Now, she actually witnessed Mrs. Conway pushing and punching the policeman. Remember Delroy Conway himself saying he got what he asked for. Now, insinuations of racism have been made throughout this case, and I suggest, in order to divert us from the real issue, which is that of assault, I suggest to you that the only racism shown in evidence in this court has been from the defendant himself.
So, how then could the police have legally entered the Conway home? There is only one other way: by invitation from the occupier. Now, what you must ask yourselves, members of the jury, and what you must consider very carefully, is what was that condition? The only legal justification for the police to enter the Conways' flat, did Mrs. Conway invite them in? Well, the prosecution is asking you to believe that she did. Well, if you believe that, then you must also believe that Delroy Conway is a very strange animal indeed, because, according to the prosecution, Delroy Conway, knowing that the two men standing in the hallway were police officers who had been invited in by his mother, knowing that these two men merely wished to question him in relation to a charge to which he had an absolute defense, knowing all this, then suddenly attacked the two officers. Well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? Yet, this is what the prosecution is asking you to believe. I suggest to you that what happened, in fact, was that the two officers had no legal right whatsoever to be in the Conway flat on the night of the 28th, and that Delroy Conway and his mother were merely protecting themselves and their home against intruders.
Members of the jury, remember you must be satisfied, so you feel sure of the guilt of an accused person before you can convict that person of any offence. Now, will you retire, elect a foreman to speak for you, and consider your verdict?
On the first count of assaulting the police in the course of their duty, do you find the accused Wilma Conway guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On that charge again, do you find the accused Delroy Conway guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second count of wounding with intent to resist lawful apprehension, do you find the accused Delroy Conway guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
And is that the verdict of you all?
It is.
You can join us again when our cameras return to bring you another case in the Crown Court.